Addressing the crisis, 5 strategic solutions to prevent national bankruptcy in 2024. Introduction. As the U.S. approaches 2024, the threat of national bankruptcy looms large, driven by skyrocketing national debt and projected budget deficits. To avert this crisis, experts have proposed a range of strategic solutions. Insights from FDIC Chairman Martin J, Gruenberg economist Brian Riedl, and the regulatory landscape following recent bank failures underscore the urgency for reform. This report synthesizes their perspectives to outline 5 strategic solutions aimed at stabilizing the U.S. economy and preventing bankruptcy. 1. Strengthening regulatory oversight. Background and context. In his speech at the Brookings Institution, Chairman Gruenberg emphasized the lessons learned from past financial crises, including the thrift and banking crisis of the 1980s and the global financial crisis of 2008. These crises were exacerbated by inadequate regulatory frameworks and poor risk management practices. Gruenberg's analysis highlights the need for a robust regulatory environment to mitigate systemic risks, particularly for regional banks that have been vulnerable to sudden failures. Strategic solution. The first step toward preventing national bankruptcy is to enhance regulatory oversight of financial institutions. This includes improving capital and liquidity requirements. Financial institutions, especially regional banks, should be required to maintain higher capital reserves and liquidity ratios to withstand economic shocks. Implementing stress tests. Regular and rigorous stress testing of banks should be mandated to assess their resilience to potential economic downturns. Enhancing supervisory powers. Regulatory agencies must be empowered to take swift action against institutions exhibiting signs of distress, including requiring timely corrective measures. By fortifying the regulatory framework, the government can reduce the likelihood of future bank failures and maintain public confidence in the financial system. 2. Comprehensive budgetary reforms. Background and context. Brian Riedl, in his comprehensive federal budget plan, warned that the national debt could reach 236% of GDP within 3 decades if current policies remain unchanged. Central to this growing debt are the rising costs of Social Security and Medicare, projected to generate a combined cash deficit of $124 trillion over the next 30 years. Strategic solution. Implementing a bipartisan budgetary reform plan is critical to stabilizing the federal budget. Key components include adjusting Social Security and Medicare benefits. Gradually trimming benefits for higher income recipients can help alleviate the financial burden on these programs. Ensuring sustainability for future generations. Tax reforms. Increasing taxes on businesses and high-income earners can generate additional revenue necessary to fund essential services without drastic cuts to anti-poverty programs. Controlled spending. Maintaining funding levels for critical services while capping overall discretionary spending growth can help balance the budget without compromising essential programs. By taking these measures, lawmakers can set the U.S. on a more sustainable fiscal path. 3. Promoting bipartisan cooperation. Background and context. The urgency of the fiscal crisis demands a collaborative approach among lawmakers transcending party lines. Riedl's proposal underscores the need for a bipartisan strategy to implement necessary reforms given the historically polarized political landscape. Strategic solution. To effectively address the crisis, promoting bipartisan cooperation is essential. This can be achieved through joint committees. Establishing bipartisan committees to develop and promote fiscal reforms can foster collaboration and create a united front in addressing the national debt. Public engagement. Engaging the public in discussions about the need for fiscal responsibility can create pressure on lawmakers to act and support reform initiatives. Setting clear goals. Lawmakers should set specific, measurable goals for debt reduction that can be achieved through cooperative efforts, ensuring accountability. A commitment to bipartisan action is vital for implementing the reforms necessary to avert economic disaster. 4. Risk management and financial literacy. Background and context. the failures experienced in 2023, particularly among regional banks, highlighted the need for improved risk management practices across the financial sector. Gruenberg noted that many institutions failed to adequately manage interest rate and liquidity risks. Strategic solution: enhancing risk management practices and promoting financial literacy among consumers and businesses is critical. This can be achieved by education programs, implementing financial literacy programs aimed at educating consumers on managing debt, understanding credit, and making informed financial decisions. Corporate risk management training, offering training for financial professionals on best practices in risk management can help prevent future crises. Encouraging transparency: financial institutions should be encouraged to provide clear information on their risk management strategies, allowing stakeholders to make informed decisions. By fostering a culture of risk awareness and financial literacy, the likelihood of future economic crises can be reduced. 5. Reforming entitlement programs. Background in context: the substantial projected deficits in Social Security and Medicare necessitate immediate reform. With the aging population and increasing life expectancy, the current structure of these programs is unsustainable without significant changes. Strategic solution: comprehensive reform of entitlement programs is necessary to secure their longevity. Possible reforms include raising eligibility ages. Gradually increasing the eligibility age for Social Security and Medicare can align benefits with increasing life expectancy. Adjusting benefit calculations. Implementing a more equitable formula for calculating benefits can ensure that those who need assistance most receive adequate support. Encouraging private savings. Promoting retirement savings plans and incentivizing personal savings can help reduce reliance on government programs. These reforms can stabilize entitlement programs, ensuring their viability for future generations. Conclusion: addressing the looming crisis of national bankruptcy in 2024 requires a multifaceted approach that combines strengthened regulatory oversight, comprehensive budgetary reforms, bipartisan cooperation, enhanced risk management practices, and entitlement reform. By implementing these strategic solutions, the U.S. can stabilize its economy, regain public trust, and avert a potentially devastating fiscal crisis. The lessons learned from past financial crises must guide policymakers in their quest for sustainable economic solutions, ensuring a more secure financial future for all Americans. To address the looming crisis of national bankruptcy in 2024, a multifaceted approach is required, focusing on reforms to stabilize the U.S. economy. Here are 5 strategic solutions that incorporate insights from various analyses. 1. Regulatory reforms in banking. The FDIC Chairman Martin J. Gruenberg emphasizes the importance of stringent regulatory oversight, particularly for regional banks. Reforms should enhance capital and liquidity requirements to bolster financial institutions against systemic risks. Strengthening supervision can prevent the kind of rapid growth and poor risk management that led to past crises such as the 2008 global financial crisis and recent regional bank failures. 2. Fiscal responsibility through budgetary measures. Economist Brian Riedl proposes a comprehensive federal budget plan aimed at stabilizing the national debt. Key components include trimming benefits for affluent Social Security and Medicare recipients, increasing taxes on high-income earners and businesses, and ensuring that essential services remain funded without excessive cuts to anti-poverty programs. This approach seeks a bipartisan agreement to achieve fiscal consolidation, addressing the projected $124 trillion cash deficit in Social Security and Medicare over the next 30 years. 3. Addressing the entitlement crisis. As the U.S. faces an increasing number of retirees, reforms must tackle the unsustainable trajectory of entitlement programs. Adjusting the eligibility criteria for Social Security and Medicare, including increasing the retirement age and modifying the benefit calculation methods, is essential. Ensuring that high-income retirees bear some burden of the costs can help alleviate the financial pressure on these programs. 4. Promoting economic growth and productivity. Although economic growth alone cannot solve the fiscal crisis, fostering a robust economy is crucial. Policies aimed at enhancing labor force participation, refining the tax code to incentivize savings and investment, and improving job training and education can contribute to overall productivity. A growing economy can help stabilize tax revenues and reduce the relative burden of debt. 5. Bipartisan collaboration for long-term stability. The ongoing political division poses a significant challenge to enacting necessary reforms. A concerted effort to foster bipartisan cooperation is vital for the implementation of any substantial budgetary or regulatory changes. Historical precedents such as the 1983 Social Security reforms illustrate the potential for successful bipartisan action on fiscal issues. Counterintuitive insights. The role of aging population. While an aging population is often viewed as a burden, it also presents an opportunity for economic stimulation through increased demand for services tailored to seniors, potentially fueling job creation in healthcare and related sectors. Wealth of seniors. Contrary to the perception that most seniors are financially struggling, many are wealthier than younger generations, suggesting that reforms to entitlement programs could focus more on high-income retirees without exacerbating poverty among low-income seniors. Tax increases and economic growth. Traditionally, tax increases are feared to stifle economic growth. However, the proposed tax adjustments for higher earners and corporations could be designed in a way that minimizes negative impacts on broader economic activity, challenging the notion that all tax hikes are inherently detrimental. In conclusion, addressing the risk of national bankruptcy in 2024 requires a comprehensive strategy combining regulatory reforms, fiscal discipline, and bipartisan cooperation. By implementing these solutions, the U.S. can work towards stabilizing its economy and preventing a fiscal crisis. In the report Addressing the Crisis: 5 Strategic Solutions to Prevent National Bankruptcy in 2024, there are several important points that many readers may overlook due to the complexity and breadth of the topic at hand. Here are some of those key aspects, along with their significance. 1. Historical lessons from financial crises. The report references the experiences of past financial crises, particularly those from the 1980s and the 2008 global financial crisis. It emphasizes that these crises were often rooted in similar issues: inadequate regulatory oversight, interest rate risks, and poor capital management. Many readers may gloss over this historical context, but it is significant because it highlights recurring issues that, if not addressed, are likely to lead to similar outcomes in the future. Understanding these patterns can inform current regulatory practices and policies, ensuring that lessons learned are not forgotten and that proactive measures are taken to mitigate risks. 2. Debt crisis projections. Brian Riedl's analysis projects that the U.S. national debt could reach 236% of GDP within the next 3 decades. This figure is staggering and might be dismissed as unrealistic or too far in the future to worry about. However, the significance lies in the implications of such a debt level. It would mean that interest costs could consume a large portion of federal tax revenues, severely limiting the government's ability to fund essential services. This projection should serve as a wake-up call for urgent fiscal reforms and is a clear indicator of unsustainable fiscal policies that need to be addressed before they spiral out of control. 3. Bipartisan cooperation as a key to reform. The report emphasizes the need for bipartisan cooperation in implementing necessary reforms. This may seem like a cliché in political discourse, but its significance is profound. Bipartisan support is essential for enacting reforms that will have lasting impacts on the federal budget and debt crisis. When parties are divided, significant reforms that could stabilize the economy are unlikely to pass. Pushing the nation closer to crisis. Recognizing the importance of collaboration can influence how constituents view their representatives and may encourage more pragmatic policymaking. 4. Regulatory reforms and financial stability. FDIC Chairman Martin Gruenberg highlights the need for stronger regulatory oversight, especially for regional banks. While readers might focus on broader economic policies, the specifics of regulatory reforms are crucial to preventing systemic risks in the banking sector. Failures like those of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank illustrate vulnerabilities in the financial system that could lead to widespread economic instability. Undervaluing the importance of regulatory frameworks can lead to complacency, which has historically resulted in significant financial fallout. 5. The unsustainable nature of current entitlement programs. Riedl articulates that Social Security and Medicare face combined cash deficits of $124 trillion over the next 30 years. Many readers may be unaware of the scale of these deficits and the implications for future generations, such as relying on economic growth or inflating debt away. This aspect is significant as it calls for a realistic appraisal of the fiscal landscape. Many may hold on to optimistic solutions that ignore the structural problems within the budget. Recognizing these mirages is essential for fostering a serious discussion about viable solutions that can address the underlying issues rather than temporary fixes that ultimately fail. 7. The intergenerational wealth transfer. The report suggests that current fiscal policies represent a significant wealth transfer from younger generations to retirees, many of whom are wealthier than the working-age population. This point may be overlooked by those who focus solely on the benefits of entitlement programs without considering their long-term fiscal impact. The transfer of wealth ultimately raises questions about fairness and sustainability in social programs, prompting discussions on how to balance the needs of current retirees with the financial realities faced by future taxpayers. 8. The importance of immediate action. Throughout the report, there is a clear call for immediate action to avert a looming crisis. While many may feel that there is still time to address these issues, the report argues that delaying action will only exacerbate the problem. This urgency should resonate with policymakers and the public. The historical context of previous crises teaches that inaction can lead to catastrophic outcomes, reinforcing the need for timely interventions. Conclusion. In summary, while the report provides a comprehensive overview of the challenges facing the U.S. economy and the necessary reforms, the nuances within its content are crucial for understanding the broader implications of inaction. The historical lessons, specific projections, and the urgent need for bipartisan cooperation are all critical elements that, if overlooked, could lead to a failure to address the impending fiscal crisis effectively. Recognizing and acting upon these overlooked points can help shape a more sustainable economic future. 1. Historical context and lessons from past crises. The speech by FDIC Chairman Martin J. at Gruenberg underscores the critical importance of learning from previous financial crises such as the thrift and bank crises of the 1980s and the 2008 global financial crisis. The common factors that led to these crises, interest rate and liquidity risks, inadequate capital, and poor management, highlight the need for effective regulation and supervision to mitigate systemic risks. This historical context is invaluable for informing current policy debates and shaping proactive strategies to avert future crises. 2. Debt crisis projections and fiscal sustainability. Brian Riedl's analysis presents alarming projections regarding the national debt, forecasting it could soar at 236% of GDP within 3 decades. The combined cash deficit of Social Security and Medicare is projected to reach $124 trillion over the next 30 years, raising critical concerns about fiscal sustainability. This point emphasizes the necessity of comprehensive reforms to stabilize the budget and prevent a fiscal crisis, illustrating the dire consequences of inaction and the urgency for political leaders to address this impending crisis. 3. Proposed strategic solutions. The proposed solutions from both Gruenberg and Riedl converge on several strategic reforms, including enhancing regulatory oversight for financial institutions and implementing a bipartisan budgetary plan. Gruenberg advocates for stronger capital and liquidity requirements for banks, particularly regional ones, while Riedl suggests reforms to Social Security and Medicare, such as trimming benefits for higher income recipients and increasing taxes on businesses and the wealthy. These solutions underscore the importance of a multifaceted approach to managing economic risks and ensuring long-term fiscal health. For bipartisan cooperation is a necessity for reform, both sources highlight the urgent need for bipartisan cooperation in enacting necessary reforms. Riedl's bipartisan blueprint for stabilizing the federal budget acknowledges that significant changes to entitlement programs and tax policies are politically challenging but essential for avoiding a debt crisis. The emphasis on cross-party collaboration reflects the reality that overcoming partisan divides is crucial for implementing effective fiscal strategies that can endure political changes and secure the nation's economic future. 1. The Great Depression 1929 to 1939. The Great Depression serves as one of the most significant economic crises in modern history. Characterized by a severe worldwide economic downturn that began with the stock market crash of October 1929. The crisis led to widespread bank failures, massive unemployment, and a significant decrease in consumer spending. The government response included the implementation of the New Deal by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, which sought to provide relief for the unemployed, recovery of the economy, and reform of the financial system. Key reforms included the establishment of the Social Security Act and the Securities Exchange Commission (SEC), which aimed to regulate the stock market and protect investors. 2. The Latin American Debt Crisis 1980s. The Latin American debt crisis of the 1980s was a financial crisis that originated in the region due to excessive borrowing by countries like Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina during the 1970s, facilitated by international banks. When interest rates rose in the early 1980s and global economic conditions shifted, many countries struggled to repay their debts, leading to defaults. This crisis prompted significant reforms in the region, including austerity measures, structural adjustment programs imposed by the International Monetary Fund (IMF), and comprehensive economic reforms aimed at stabilizing economies and restoring creditor confidence. 3. The European Sovereign Debt Crisis 2009 to 2012. Following the global financial crisis of 2008, several European countries, notably Greece, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, and Italy, faced severe financial difficulties due to high levels of government debt and deficits. The crisis was marked by rising borrowing costs, economic recession, and social unrest. In response, the European Union (EU) and the International Monetary Fund (IMF) provided bailout packages to affected countries, conditional on implementing strict austerity measures and economic reforms. The crisis highlighted the need for fiscal discipline within the Eurozone and led to the establishment of mechanisms like the European Stability Mechanism (ESM) to provide financial assistance to member states in distress. The crisis of national bankruptcy looming over the U.S. in 2024 demands immediate and strategic solutions to avert a fiscal disaster. Drawing from insights provided by FDIC Chairman Martin J, Gruenberg budget analyst Brian Riedl, and the regulatory responses to recent banking crises, this analysis will outline 5 critical strategic solutions to stabilize the economy and prevent national bankruptcy. 1. Stronger regulatory reforms. The failures of regional banks in 2023, such as Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, underscore the need for robust regulatory reforms. Gruenberg emphasizes the importance of enhancing regulatory oversight to mitigate systemic risks in the financial sector. This includes tightening capital and liquidity requirements, particularly for regional banks that have significant uninsured deposits. Implementing a more rigorous framework for stress testing and risk assessment can help identify vulnerabilities before they escalate into crises. A proactive regulatory environment will foster greater resilience within the financial system, protecting it from future shocks. 2. Bipartisan fiscal responsibility. Riedl's comprehensive federal budget plan calls for a bipartisan approach to stabilize the national debt, projected to reach unsustainable levels. Key measures include modifying benefits for higher income recipients of Social Security and Medicare, increasing taxes on businesses and affluent individuals, and ensuring that essential services remain funded without drastic cuts to anti-poverty programs. To gain political traction, these reforms must be framed as necessary sacrifices for long-term economic stability. A cooperative legislative agenda that transcends partisan divides will be essential for enacting these measures promptly. 3. Addressing long-term entitlement liabilities. The significant projected cash deficits of $124 trillion in Social Security and Medicare over the next 30 years necessitate urgent reforms. The aging population and rising healthcare costs exacerbate these liabilities, adding pressure to the federal budget. A proactive stance is needed to reform these entitlement programs, focusing on ensuring their sustainability without disproportionately burdening future generations. This could involve adjusting eligibility ages, recalibrating benefit formulas, and implementing means testing for wealthier beneficiaries. By addressing these issues now, the government can significantly reduce future financial pressures. 4. Comprehensive tax reform. To meet the escalating costs of federal programs, a thorough examination of the tax code is crucial. Riedl's proposal suggests raising certain tax rates, particularly on high-income earners and corporations, to ensure a fair contribution to the national budget. This could include closing loopholes, eliminating unnecessary deductions, and broadening the tax base. Additionally, introducing a value-added tax (VAT) could generate substantial revenue while spreading the tax burden more evenly across the population. Effective tax reform will not only raise necessary funds but also enhance the overall efficiency and fairness of the tax system. 5. Investment in economic growth. While immediate fiscal measures are vital, investing in long-term economic growth is equally essential to stabilize the economy. Policies that promote workforce development, innovation, infrastructure development, and clean energy can create jobs and enhance productivity. A focus on sustainable economic growth will increase tax revenues in the long run, providing a buffer against rising deficits. Federal investments in education and vocational training can equip the workforce with the skills needed in a rapidly changing economy, driving economic resilience. Conclusion. Addressing the impending national bankruptcy requires a multifaceted approach that integrates stronger regulatory practices, bipartisan fiscal responsibility, entitlement reform, comprehensive tax reform, and investments in economic growth. By acting decisively and collaboratively, policymakers can mitigate the risks of fiscal collapse and secure a stable economic future for the United States. The lessons learned from past financial crises must inform current actions to build a more resilient and sustainable economic framework, ensuring that the country can weather future challenges.